If you bring up the topic of programmability in terms of SQL Server, most people are immediately going to think stored procedure. So let's talk about what a stored procedure is. A stored procedure is a collection of T-SQL code that gets executed when it's called by a particular name. So from code, we call that name and it executes that particular stored procedure. Now that particular name is the name that we gave it when we wrote the code. Now, this is very similar in operation and functionality to procedures or subroutines in other programming languages. So if you've ever done any C or C++ or C# type programming, subroutines, procedures there, same thing, exact same thing. And similar to those in other programming languages, a stored procedure can accept input parameters. It can return output parameters to the calling procedure or batch. It can contain programming statements, and that's really why we're doing it. And there's almost unlimited capabilities with the programming statements and the way you can build stored procedures. They can be as complex as you want them. And a stored procedure can also return a status value indicating success or failure of the stored procedure and a reason for the failure. Now, there is no predefined maximum size of a stored procedure. But there are 4 types of stored procedures that you need to be familiar with because you could see these mentioned on the exam and you will see them out there in the real world. The first type, by far the most common, is the user-defined stored procedure. Then there's temporary stored procedures, system stored procedures, and then extended user-defined stored procedures. So let's take a look at all 4 of these just so that we're all on the same base. A user-defined stored procedure, like I said, is the most common. It can be created in a user-defined database. You can create these in any system database except the resource database. And we're going to take a look at an example of writing some user-defined stored procedures later on in the course here. Now, temporary stored procedures are just what they sound like. They're a form of user-defined stored procedures, and they're very, very similar to temporary tables when we talked about those a little bit earlier in the course. They're stored in the TempDB database, and a temporary stored procedure can be local or global. Local stored procedures are visible to the current user connection that created them only, and they're prefixed with a single pound sign or number sign, whatever your preference for calling that thing is. And global stored procedures are visible to any user, and they're prefixed with 2 pound signs or 2 number signs. And the only thing to remember about these is these stored procedures will go away when people aren't using them anymore. Now, system stored procedures, you will use these quite a bit. These are the stored procedures that were included with SQL Server, and they begin with the prefix SP underscore. Now, I want to jump out real quickly to the Management Studio and show you the system stored procedures. Notice I'll go into the system databases, I'll go into the master database, come down to programmability, and notice right here is stored procedures. Well, if I expand that, you will see system stored procedures. And if I expand that, you will see quite a few stored procedures. And you can do all kinds of things with these, but let me come back up here and show you, for example, when we want to add a user, there is the system stored procedure add user. And I can expand this and I can see the parameters that it accepts. Notice it takes a login name, name in database, group name, and so forth. And if I right click it and choose modify while we're out here playing around in the graphical user interface, I'll show you this little trick. This is a great way to learn some code because this shows you the code that was used to write up that stored procedure. So that is some neat stuff to learn, and you can go out there and always look, and that is how you would add a new user to SQL Server. So anyway, that is a real quick look at system stored procedures. And again, these always start with SP underscore. And then there's extended user-defined stored procedures. These are used to create external routines in languages like C, so I can reach from inside SQL Server outside and do things. They're implemented as DLLs that SQL Server can dynamically load and run. Just be aware of them and also know that they're going to be removed in a future version of SQL Server, so do not use these in new development. But that's what a stored procedure is, and that's the 4 types of stored procedures. And in the next video or two, We're going to talk about why we want to use stored procedures and why there's all this buzz about them. And then we'll start to take a look at examples. We'll take a look at a simple stored procedure and then start to add parameters and show you exactly how to put one of these together and how to start coding them.